One of the questions I get asked the most is, Attilio, how do we go about raising capital in Europe? And the topic of this video revolves around the most common routes or avenues to raise capital for your investment funds in Europe. When looking at raising capital in Europe for your investment funds, there are a few ways to do it. But before looking at this, it makes sense to look at Europe in perspective, especially if you are from the US, and consider the inevitable differences that these two continents have. For what concerns raising capital in Europe from legal or regulatory perspective, this will entail some activity of marketing and soliciting of investors. And so there are related considerations to make, in the sense that you will have to either have your own license to carry out these investment services and activities, or you'll have to rent one. But from a commercial perspective, we also have to accept that Europe and the single market is made of a set of different member states, and the states have their own languages, their own customs, their own practices of business. If you think that Europe is all the same and you will be able to raise capital by speaking exclusively English and treating your counterparts the same way. The first approach that we see successful in raising capital in Europe is the one of hiring so-called third-party marketers. Now, third-party marketers do exist not only in Europe, but it's a concept that should be known in the US as well. From a regulatory perspective, third-party marketers are investment firms that are licensed to carry out certain investment services and activities. And so those are the third-party marketers you want to work with, the ones who have a license, especially if the license is a license to operate in Europe, which is something very valuable these days, especially after Brexit. Third-party marketers, from a commercial perspective, they are in the business of investor relations, but more specifically, they pre-screen investments for the professional investors, the high net worth individuals, the family offices, and they have long-standing relationships with these clients, and those are realistically their clients, right? And as a piece of additional advice, if you think that you can approach third-party marketers as a fund manager to have them sell or market your products, and you can look at third-party marketers like any other service provider for your funds, you are in for a rude awakening, if you like. And if you want to know more about third-party marketers in Europe, we have linked an article in the description of this video. The second route, which is also reflective of a trend that developed after Brexit, is the one of entering into a tied agent arrangement with a MiFID firm in Europe. A MiFID firm is, in jargon, a firm that has a license, valid in Europe once again, to provide investment services and carry on investment activities. And the tied agent is, in essence, an ally of this MiFID firm. It doesn't have to be authorized as such by any local authority, because it will derive its authorization from the relationship with the MiFID firm. Subject to respecting all the conditions of these arrangements, and European authorities have been very strict on how a tied agent arrangement should be structured. And if you want to know more about it, we have linked an article in the description of this video that tells you more about it. Fund managers from outside of Europe, by entering into these agreements, have the legal coverage to be able to approach investors and offer also their investment funds. Using this arrangement might come at a cost, also in terms of capital investment, but is essentially one of the ways to get also acquainted affiliated with a specific member state in Europe. And this is also important for the other option, which is to set up your own licensed investment firm in Europe. This is more of a mature type of step in your journey of raising capital in Europe, because it's a long-term commitment and it also requires a significant commitment of resources and capital. The reason why going through a tied agent arrangement first, in our view, is a good type of approach is because with Brexit and the UK no longer being part of the Union, we can no longer consider that a US fund manager can set up its investment operation in London, which is traditionally very welcoming for business, especially from the US, but any other place abroad, and from London be able to target investors in Europe. This is an old approach that no longer works. For there not being any other European capital that has replaced London in a way, it makes sense to gain some ground, gain some experience in a specific European member state, rent a license with a tied agent arrangement before you find the member state in Europe you're comfortable with and where you want to set up your MiFID investment firm and have a longer commitment to that member state. Lastly, no conversation on raising capital in Europe would be ever complete if we didn't mention reverse solicitation. Now, reverse solicitation is not a proper strategy, if you like, for raising capital in Europe or elsewhere. However, it might be a good approach to test the market in specific member states in Europe. And if you want to know more about it, once again, we linked another article in the description of this video. Once again, I wanted to thank you for getting up to the end of this video. I wanted to remind you to subscribe to the channel and hit like to this video. There is more to come on the European fund business. Stay tuned.